When a natural disaster hits, the first crisis is obviously survival. But what about the crisis after the crisis? The months or even years that people wait just to have a real home again. Well, today we're going to explore a really fascinating idea coming out of Jamaica that promises to solve that exact problem. And it all starts with a simple steel box.
That is a pretty big promise, right? Privacy, dignity, and safety, all delivered in a week. That's the vision from architectural designer Curtis Hylton. His proposal is as simple as it is radical. Take old shipping containers and turn them into homes for people who've lost absolutely everything. But the key here is that it's not just about speed. It's about restoring a person's dignity.
So to really get why this idea is so urgent, you first have to understand the sheer force that created this crisis in the first place. 185 miles per hour. Let that sink in for a second. That was the wind speed of Hurricane Melissa when it hit, making it the strongest storm on record to ever strike Jamaica.
A storm with that kind of power doesn't just damage things, it completely erases them. The scale of the destruction that Melissa left behind was so immense that it created a crisis that demanded a totally new way of thinking. The old playbook just wasn't going to cut it. And on the ground, the reality was just devastating. In the western part of Jamaica, a staggering 90%, that's 9 out of every 10 homes, were either completely destroyed or had their roofs torn clean off. This wasn't just a repair job. It was a near-total wipeout of housing for thousands and thousands of families.
And the damage went so much further than just homes. Entire communities were flattened. Roads were totally impassable, buried under debris. Power was out everywhere. Critical buildings, schools, clinics, even churches were just unusable. Society, for all intents and purposes, had ground to a halt.
And all of this leads us to that second crisis I mentioned. You have thousands of people who are now homeless. So the challenge becomes finding shelter, right? But as we're about to see, the traditional ways of handling this kind of disaster are proving to be painfully slow and just not enough.
So, families were basically left with this terrible choice. They could either move into a temporary shelter, which is crowded, hot, often unsafe, and offers zero privacy, or they could wait for months, sometimes even years, for a traditional home to get rebuilt. They were just trapped in limbo.
And as Curtis Hylton points out, this isn't just about having a roof over your head. It's about having peace of mind. These tent cities just couldn't provide the basic security people need to even begin to think about putting their lives back together.
So, it's right in the middle of this desperation that a new idea starts to really gain some ground. An idea that maybe once seemed a little out there is now being seen as a really practical and maybe even essential lifeline. Let's take a closer look at this box of hope.
So, what exactly is a retrofitted container home? Well, the concept is really straightforward. You take a standard steel shipping container, you've seen them, and you transform it into a completely functional, move-in-ready house before it even gets delivered to the site.
This is exactly why it's being called the best quick-fix long-term option. It's a quick fix because of how incredibly fast it is, but it's a long-term option because of how durable it is. And that combination, that's what makes this whole idea so powerful.
Okay, but how do you actually turn a giant steel box into a secure home? Well, the logistics behind it are surprisingly simple.
The real beauty here is just how simple it is. The whole process boils down to 3 main steps. First, you prepare a simple foundation, like a concrete pad or a platform. Second, the finished prefabricated home is delivered on a truck. And third, it's anchored down securely. That's it. A family can be in a new home in days, not months.
And it's so crucial to understand, these are not empty shells. They come in all different sizes, from studios up to 3 bedrooms. They arrive with bathrooms already fitted, electricity pre-wired, and windows and doors already installed. They can even have AC and be hooked up to septic tanks. They are truly 100% move-in ready.
But let's tackle the elephant in the room. Are they safe in another hurricane? It's a fair question, because some containers were damaged by Melissa. But Hylton explains that those failures happened because they were improperly installed. They're basically just placed on the ground. The key is anchoring them correctly to a foundation. When you do that, the steel structure is incredibly resilient to strong winds.
And that structural integrity is everything. These containers are actually so strong they can be safely stacked up to 3 stories high. Now, that doesn't just prove how durable they are, it also opens up the possibility of creating denser, multifamily housing on really small plots of land.
And the potential for scalability here is just staggering.
On just 5 acres of land, you could potentially house 300 families. 300! That's a kind of speed and density that's just impossible with traditional construction methods.
But you know, when you really get down to it, this proposal is about so much more than just logistics. It's about changing how we care for people in their most vulnerable moments. It's really about restoring their dignity.
This comparison really says it all. I mean, just look at the difference. A private, lockable space versus a communal, open one. Your own bathroom versus shared facilities. A secure steel structure versus a flimsy tent. It's the difference between feeling like a refugee and feeling like you actually have a home, a real base from which you can start to rebuild.
So let's just recap the whole argument here. They are fast to deploy, they're cost-effective, they're built to be durable as long as they're installed correctly, they're scalable for mass sheltering, they come with modern utilities, and, most importantly, they offer a private and dignified way to live. Plus, they're flexible enough for long-term use. It's a pretty comprehensive solution.
Which really brings us to this final big question. In a world that's facing more and more intense disasters, maybe this proposal from Jamaica is forcing us to think differently. It challenges all the old models, and it suggests that sometimes the most humane solutions can come from the most unexpected places.